The old house on Maplewood Lane had been abandoned for years. Locals whispered about its dark history, but no one spoke of it openly. Some said a woman had vanished inside without a trace. Others claimed they still saw shadows moving behind the cracked windows at night. When Ava Carter moved into town, she didn't believe in ghost stories. Fresh out of college and desperate for an affordable place to stay, she jumped at the chance to rent the house for a low price. It was quaint, spacious, and peaceful, exactly what she needed. At first, everything seemed normal. She unpacked her boxes, set up her furniture, and started her new job at the local bookstore. But then strange things started happening. At exactly midnight, she would wake up gasping for breath, her heart pounding as if she had been running for her life. The air in the house felt thick, as if someone else was there.
Objects moved on their own, small things at first. Her keys, which she swore she had left on the kitchen counter, would appear in the bathroom. Her books would rearrange themselves on the shelves overnight. Then came the whispers. At night, just as she was drifting off to sleep, she heard a woman's voice, soft and distant. "Help me, please." Ava's blood ran cold. One evening, determined to prove to herself that she wasn't imagining things, she set up her phone camera in the hallway before going to bed. The next morning, she replayed the footage. What she saw made her stomach drop. A shadowy figure stood at the end of the hallway, watching her bedroom door. It didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there. Ava's hands trembled as she paused the video. The figure had no face. She knew she had to leave. She started packing her things, heart racing, but as she reached for the front door, it slammed shut on its own. Ava screamed, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Then she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. She turned around. A woman stood there, pale, translucent, her eyes hollow and desperate. "You have to help me," the woman whispered. Ava's breath hitched. "Who are you?" she managed to say. The ghost's lips quivered. "They buried me here." Ava's blood turned to ice. The whispers, the shadows, the midnight terror. This house wasn't just haunted. It was a crime scene. Someone had murdered this woman, and now, she wouldn't rest until the truth was revealed. Ava had two choices. Run and pretend this never happened, or stay and uncover the secrets buried within these walls. She took a deep breath. "Tell me everything." Ava's pulse thundered in her ears. The ghostly woman's presence made the air feel heavy, almost suffocating, but she forced herself to stand her ground. "Tell me everything," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The spirit's hollow eyes flickered with sorrow as she stepped closer. Ava shuddered at the sudden chill wrapping around her body. "My name was Eleanor, and this was my home." Ava swallowed hard. The past tense made her stomach knot. Eleanor continued, her voice carrying the weight of years of suffering. "I fell in love with the wrong man. He was charming, persuasive, but cruel beneath the surface. When I tried to leave him, he wouldn't let me go. He locked me in this house, hidden away from the world. One night, after I fought back, her voice trembled. He killed me, buried me beneath the floorboards of the basement." Ava felt sick. She had been living above a grave. "Does anyone know?" Ava asked, her voice hoarse. Eleanor shook her head. "No one ever searched for me. He told everyone I ran away. And after he moved out, the house sat empty, until you came." Ava's mind raced. If the murderer was still out there, had he ever thought about the house? Did he assume his secret would stay buried forever? She took a deep breath. "Eleanor, I promise you, I will find out who did this. I'll make sure the world knows the truth." The ghost's expression softened, as if for the first time in decades, there was hope. But before Ava could say anything else, bang, 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 a violent knock rattled the front door, echoing through the house. Ava froze. No one ever visited her. She turned to Eleanor, but the ghost had vanished. Another knock. Harder, more urgent. Ava crept toward the door, her heart hammering. She peeked through the peephole. A man stood on the porch, tall, broad-shouldered, and vaguely familiar. His eyes darted around nervously, and in his hand, he held a shovel. Cold dread crawled down Ava's spine. She didn't know how, but she was sure of one thing. The man outside was the killer. Ava's breath hitched as she stepped away from the door. Her hands trembled. The man outside was Eleanor's killer. She didn't know how he had found out she was here. Maybe he had been watching. Maybe the sudden activity in the house had unsettled him. But he was here now. And he had a shovel. Think, Ava, think, she whispered to herself. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then, the doorknob twisted. Panic shot through her. She bolted to the back of the house, grabbing her phone, but before she could call anyone, a voice rang out from the porch. I know you're in there. Ava's blood ran cold. You don't belong in this house. Walk away now, and you won't get hurt. The voice was deep, gruff, filled with danger. Ava clamped a hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. The weight of Eleanor's presence pressed around her, urging her to stay quiet. Minutes passed. Then, footsteps retreating. Ava let out a shaky breath as she peered out the window. The man was gone. For now. As soon as she was sure he had left, Ava ran straight to the police station. She didn't care how crazy she sounded. She needed help. She burst through the doors, breathless, and slammed her hands on the counter. You have to listen to me, she said desperately. The officer on duty, an older man with graying hair, looked up from his paperwork with mild annoyance. What's the problem, miss? Ava inhaled sharply. How was she supposed to explain this? A man. He murdered a woman years ago. Her body is still in my house. He came back tonight, and I think he's going to do something. The officer raised a skeptical brow. And, how do you know this? Ava hesitated. She couldn't exactly say. The ghost of his victim told me. I've seen things. Strange things. And I found out that a woman went missing years ago. She lived in that house before me. The officer sighed, rubbing his temples. Miss, do you have any actual proof? Anyone can claim a house is haunted, but that doesn't mean a crime happened there. Ava's heart sank. I'm telling the truth. If you just check the basement. Miss Carter, without concrete evidence, we can't just go digging up private property. Ava clenched her fists. So you're not going to do anything? The officer sighed. I'll file a report, but that's all I can do for now. Ava stormed out. She was on her own. Back at the house, Eleanor appeared as soon as Ava shut the door behind her. They didn't believe me, Ava whispered, frustrated. Eleanor's ghostly figure shimmered, her expression unreadable. I know how to make them believe you. Ava's breath hitched. How? Eleanor turned, her translucent form floating toward the hallway. Toward the basement. Ava followed her down the creaky steps, her flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. Eleanor pointed toward the farthest corner. Beneath the loose floorboard, Ava hesitated before kneeling down, her fingers fumbling against the wood. She pried it open, and gasped. A small, dust-covered camera sat hidden beneath the boards. I hid it, Eleanor whispered. I knew one day, someone would come. Ava turned it on. The screen flickered, showing grainy footage. Then she saw him. A man. The same man from her porch. Stood in the very basement she was kneeling in. But it was years ago. Eleanor's cries echoed as he struck her, his face twisted in rage. Ava's stomach lurched. It was undeniable proof. She grabbed the camera and ran out the door. Justice for Eleanor. This time, when Ava returned to the police station, they listened. The video footage was undeniable. The man in the video was Caleb Morris, a former resident of the town. Within hours, police secured a warrant to investigate the house. When they dug beneath the floorboards, they found Eleanor's remains. Caleb Morris was arrested that same night. News spread fast. The missing woman of Maplewood Lane had been found at last. As Ava stood by, watching the police carry Eleanor's remains away, a soft, familiar voice whispered behind her. Thank you. Ava turned. Eleanor stood there, her form glowing faintly, her expression peaceful for the first time. Ava felt her throat tighten. You're free now. Eleanor smiled, and slowly, she began to fade, until there was nothing left but the soft breeze of the night. Ava took a deep breath. The nightmare was over, and Eleanor had finally found peace.